Okay, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of On the Road from Off the Cuff. Today we have a special little update and review for you from the brand Helson. They're of course out of Hong Kong, they're a micro brand, and they're pretty much well known for their dive watches. Now, some key characteristics in design language when you're looking for a dive watch. You're going to want, of course, water resistance, typically some type of screw-down crown. You want something that's tough, legible, with a dive time bezel, and a diver's extension is always nice if you are on a bracelet. Now, this particular model that we'll be highlighting today is the Helson Shark Diver 38mm, now available in stainless steel. So on your left side, you're going to have the titanium model 38, which we reviewed previously. As well, on the right, you're going to have the stainless steel 40mm model with ETA movement that I also have reviewed in the past. Now, this whole line is quite popular, but I did want to do a little quick comparison, a little compare and contrast also, because with all of the range that the Helson Shark Diver line covers, with different sizes, different finishes, different movements, different materials, I think it can get a little bit confusing, especially when trying to figure out which model is right for you. And I have to say, this 38mm in stainless steel is hitting a bit of a sweet spot for me, and I'm really looking forward to kind of showing you guys why. As you can see, some differences are going to stand out quite clearly as you look at these, while some of them are a little bit more nuanced and you're going to have to kind of pick up as you take a closer look. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get these pieces in hand for a closer look. Okay, so let's go ahead and start by taking a look at this piece here. Now, as far as the specs go, they're pretty much same when it comes to the dimensions for the 38mm case that I previously reviewed. So you're going to get that 38mm diameter, 12mm thickness with a 46mm lug to lug. So from that standpoint, it's going to wear very similar. But of course, now that you have stainless steel versus titanium, it's going to be a little bit heavier, especially now with the milled clasp there to match with the updates. Now, for those of you who might have been on the fence between the 40 and the 38, I have to say, after having these two pieces, I'm kind of leaning towards the 38 in steel. Obviously, with these really wide lugs, it makes the watch wear a bit larger than it probably should. Obviously, I think this is still a great piece, but this feels like it wears a little bit larger just because of the wideness of the lugs. And with that same said here, this 38 is going to wear a little bit larger, and I think it looks pretty darn dialed in, especially when you compare the old clasp with the new clasp, although the new 40mm options are actually going to be equipped with the new clasp. But the blues are quite different here, and I do prefer the 38mm blue, which actually does appear to be the same color across the 38 line. Of course, here you're getting a look at comparing that beautiful coated aluminum insert versus the sapphire loomed insert. We'll actually compare these lume wise, and you can let me know which one you guys think is brighter and whatnot. And you can also see the handset pretty much still the same there. Everything really matches up quite nice. One difference is that here you have, and this might just be, you know, whenever the variation came out, they might have switched by now, but here you're going to see the flathead, here you're going to see the hex option there, which I actually prefer because you know, it's harder to mess that up, honestly, when it comes to swapping these out. But these look so great on bracelet, honestly, are so chunky, it would be pretty tough to find a strap that this thing really suits as well as this great H-link bracelet. One of the differences that I actually noticed by looking is the H-links are actually different. If you look at the center link here, this has a much wider bevel versus the skinnier bevel here, so it's almost a reverse. Here the bevel follows the line of in between. Here the bevel actually follows it more so reflects these bevels. So the actual scale is a bit different, and you can see it catches light a bit differently as well. So if you were looking to interchange these links or anything like that, I don't know if they would fit perfectly because they actually do have a bit of a different center link. But as you can see here, guys, As far as the comparison goes, although on paper, a 38 versus a 40 doesn't seem like a lot, and even here looking, it doesn't seem like, essentially it's just 1 millimeter on either side, because this is a round watch at the end of the day. You can see here that they do have quite a different play, and a lot of it has to do with how much the tapering happens as well on these beautifully wide, squared off, strong shouldered lugs. So with all that said, let's actually start getting these on wrist, just to kind of give you an idea comparatively of how they wear, and as far as the size wise and the scale when you are taking a look at these pieces. All right, as you can see on my 7¼ wrist, it actually wears quite nice, and I think some of you might even be thinking it wears small, but something about this, I think especially with that sapphire bezel insert, it actually helps kind of stretch out the dial that much more. And the steel, the way it picks up the light, I think it also does help the watch wear a little bit larger. Of course, then you get a little bit more heft because it is steel versus the titanium. This watch I really have enjoyed, but one of the things that I'd say was a bit of a miss for me was the bezel action. Just not quite as good as the steel. Yeah. Just not really a joy. I mean, I don't even want to, I just want to rush through it because it's just a little bit too grainy, a little bit too notchy, and honestly, just not as good as the steel action that I'm used to here on the 40mm. Nice and smooth. Great tactile feeling. Nice and notchy, but not overly notchy towards giving you tons of resistance. Now, this bad boy right here actually is on the better side as well. Maybe even smoother slightly, while still retaining very nice, solid, notchy feeling. So, nice little sweet spot. You can see I can do it quickly, slowly, and this is a really nicely done and executed bezel now. So really great. I'm digging that, and I'm really digging just the proportions there, guys. I think that looks great. So to go quickly between, as you guys, just to give you guys an idea of how these will wear. Now here, of course, much lighter feel, and of course that bead blast finish. You can get these in titanium and brushed, but the bead blast finish for me is kind of a fun thing to, with the titanium. And then also, it just gives it a little bit of an EDC vibe because, most of, let's say, my little pocket knives and whatnot would be, kind of a similar blasted finish there. So just grabbing that from off camera. Anyways, yeah, so I mean the titanium thing is cool, looks great. Titanium pen, right? Cool finish. So that whole side of it, from the titanium side, I do enjoy a nice bead blast on the titanium. It's worn pretty well, but because of the fact that it's smaller and lighter, it does have a little bit more of I guess the feeling of it's so light and it's so small, it doesn't give you the same kind of assurance that you do get with a steel piece, just because it's so much lighter. Now this is the older models. The newer ones will be even a little bit heftier because they do have the upgraded clasp. But when this is on the wrist, it gives you tons of wrist presence. You can see there. It doesn't look oversized by any means. Even when I get up real close, it just looks like it's, it's a larger watch, but I think you can still tell by the eye that it's not too huge. I mean, it almost feels probably like a watch if it had normal lugs anyway, and if watches that wear it like this are more probably in the 41, 42 range. But because of the wide lug, essentially, you do feel like you're getting a little bit more. Then, of course, the non-tapering bracelet also does add a little bit of heft. I think it's not a bad look by any means, but you know, I really think that, you know, as far as the Goldilocks model goes, you know, you kind of hit that just right spot when it comes to the 38 in stainless steel. Again, guys, it's nice because it's chunky, but it's not too hefty, right? It's still a chunky dive watch. And I think for most people's wrists, it'll ride on there really nicely. As you take a look here, you know, of course, I did already mention the crown and everything, the movement. You know, it's a Miyota 9015. As far as the dial goes, everything is printed on, but it's printed on and applied really, really nicely. As far as the execution goes, you're going to notice how good this Lume is. You do have the 20 millimeter lugs. That's actually across all these. They all do have 20 millimeter lugs, and then they have pretty much non-tapering bracelets. But what they do to actually be able to fit a 20 millimeter clasp on here is it just has a little step, which I thought was pretty ingenious on Helson's side, as you can see there. It just has an extra step down, so there's actual room. Same on this side, just a little step so that it can get a smaller link down into actually a very similar sized clasp. So with all that said, let's actually set up some light transition and all right, let's go ahead and hit the lights. As you can see, they both glow really, really nice. I was actually expecting the aluminum insert to glow a little bit brighter because essentially it's applied, right? It can be a little bit thicker versus essentially being printed on underneath the sapphire. But honestly, looking at this, it's hard for me to tell a real difference in brightness. So really digging that. But one thing I also like to do, of course, as part of my Lume shot setup is actually do some nice low light transition so you guys can get an idea of what these will look like in less than optimal lighting. So as you can see, of course, the hot studio lights do a great job of simulating direct sunlight, but you're not always going to be in direct sunlight. Sometimes you're going to be coming in and out of a vehicle, whatnot. Sometimes you will be also, you know, being indoors, whatnot, just being in less than optimal lighting. You're not always going to be out in the middle of a field. You can also see the way the blue renders there. Of course, on the Sapphire model, it's going to be slightly different. Although they're the same color, it's going to render a little bit differently just because the material, right? Because here you're going to have a matte dial, but then a glossy insert because it is sapphire. So of course, when it catches some reflections, there are going to be times when it's going to read and it's going to feel like one blue. There's going to be other times when it feels like it's going to be multiple blues. As far as on that matte aluminum insert, it's going to read more closely to the dial just because it's a similar finish to that same dial. But also what you can see in these low light transitions are the finishing, and the finish work is actually quite good. Of course, done to a tool-like level. Definitely not anything trying to be luxurious by any means or, you know, needlessly complex. Definitely just trying to look good and be quite serviceable and functional. And you can also notice that even in those transitionary periods, still stays quite legible, whether you're reading it because of the Lume or you're reading it because of the pure look in daylight. I have to commend Helson because one thing that I can appreciate about these models are that the Lume in daylight, it looks a little bit less green. It actually is closer to, I'd say, like more of an ivory tone. The camera might even be washing it out, making it look even whiter. But typically when you have Lume this good, it's going to render really, really green. And I think you can see that in some of the older models. So it looks like they have done some work to really focus on making sure that these are delivered as looking a little bit more white in the daylight while still retaining that really potent C3 Lume in the night. So, on the wrist, very compact proportions paired with that, the material, whether it be the lightweight titanium or the little bit heavier stainless steel. It really kind of gives you a different wear. As far as model variations go, I mean, geez, guys, the Helson Shark Diver comes in 40s, 42s, 45, brass, bronze, titanium, forged carbon fiber. So a lot of different options, as far as comparable models go. It's tough to find anything else that's out there that offers such a wide array of sizes, color options, material options. I mean, there's just so many that are out there, movement options even. So bottom line, it's still a lot of watch for the money, and now I'd say probably one of the most wearable, really mid-sized chunky watches that there are. With the titanium model, I almost think that it's like titanium is really great when used with a larger watch, maybe the 42 or a 40 in titanium, because the 40 does wear a little bit larger. I think that would be a really great application for it. I think here, the steel actually does help the watch, although smaller. It gives you the nice wrist presence and that feeling of that kind of overbuilt and chunky aesthetic as well. So it's something that not only looks like it's ready and up for the job, it actually feels like it as well. One thing also to mention is that the smaller 38 millimeters are only 300 meters water resistant versus the 40 millimeters, which are 500 meters of water resistance. So there's gonna be a little bit of a difference there, but I feel like, Helson listens. There's a lot of companies with thicker divers that are in the 500-600 range where people say, hey, just make it 300 meters, make it a little bit thinner, and more people will want it. These watches, as you guys saw on my wrist, they're actually quite thin, although they are kind of just side slabs and whatnot. If they had some tricks done in these cases, some beveling and whatnot, some extra contouring, they would definitely wear even thinner. So pretty impressive for what they are. But definitely let me know what you guys think in the comments below. If you like the video, please do a like, and if you haven't, please subscribe for more content just like this. Thanks, guys.